This is the camera certification test for the JVC GYHM 750 camera. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is tripod. First thing you want to do is check on the bottom here, all of our tripods, and we have different models, but they all have a little cord that you can wrap around to keep the legs in place. All right, we want to make sure that that's undone. Next thing you want to do is unlock this handle and pull it up out of the way so that you're able to spread the legs out. Let's get the handle out of the way. And then we can pull these legs out and kind of get it set up. Okay? I do want everyone to know that this tripod here, it has a nice wide base. I'm comfortable with that. Some of our tripods don't open up this wide. All of our tripods do have a spreader though, and the spreader on this model is down here laying on the floor. So whatever tripod you have, you want to unlock this spreader if you need to, and you can spread these legs even further. And this tripod, as you see, will get real low to the ground, and that's a nice feature, a steady low angle shot. If you need to shoot, small kids or something, we don't want to shoot from up here and be shooting down at them and on top of their heads. All right? So everyone needs to know how to operate this spreader and use it. And I'll just lock it back up here, push it in. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to raise the tripod up to a height that we're going to shoot. How high? How do we know what height that we want to shoot? We want to be eye level with our subject. Okay? We don't want to set it here and be shooting up at them. 90% of the interviews I see students shoot, at some point I see the lights in the ceiling because we're shooting up. If we're eye level with the person, all we'll see is the back wall behind them. Okay? So on this model tripod, there's two sections of legs. I always start with the bottom section. We loosen the legs so that we can move them. All it takes, as you saw, was a half turn. We don't need to loosen them till we have the legs fall off. Pull the legs up, tighten it down, another half turn. Okay? Now we've got it to this height. If we need to go higher, we've got another section of legs here. Loosen the knobs. Can we get that tight, Monica? And then we lock it down like that. Okay? All right, so there's the tripod. The next thing we want to do before we try to put the camera on the tripod is make sure that it's level. If I step back, I can see this tripod's leaning a little bit. All right? Instead of continuing to adjust the legs, on the back of the tripod, there's a level right here. Okay? And I don't know that you can see that, but there's a level. There's a little red circle, and there's a bubble in there. And we need to put that bubble in the circle. That's an easy way to level this tripod. All of our tripods have a fluid head. And instead of adjusting the legs, we can just adjust the head. So even though this tripod's leaning a bit, we've adjusted the head. How do we unlock this head? Well, there's a lock right underneath here, right underneath the head of the tripod. We loosen it, adjust that bubble, lock it back down. Okay? All right, now the next step is to take the plate off the tripod. All right? So there's a lock on this model right on the side here. We unlock this, and there's a fail-safe in here. This plate, the camera won't fall off the tripod because it won't come off. Okay? So in order to get this plate off, again in the back here, you need to push this button in, this little button right here. Okay? Push this button in, and then you can slide, tilt up, Monica, so they can see. All right? So right here, you push this button in, slide the plate off. Then you need to take this plate, and you need to attach it to an adapter plate. Okay? Anytime you check out one of our newer cameras, you need an adapter plate. So, we're going to take this screw on this plate, and we're going to line it up with one of the smaller holes on this adapter plate. There we go. All right. So we put this in here. As you'll see, this is just a screw right here. You're going to need something to tighten this down. I don't want anybody breaking their fingernails. All right. So you're going to need a coin or a key or something with you in order to tighten this down. If you don't have one, maybe you can put this together while you're in the equipment room. We've got some coins in there. And before you leave the building, do it at that point. Okay? Then you just slide this bottom plate back on the tripod from the back again and lock it down right here on the side. Okay? So now that's secure. This tripod, I'm sorry I grabbed this one. It's not in working order. You can see this head is really loose. Normally they won't be moving around like this. We'll have to use that for today. But that should be nice and tight, and when we put the camera on here, we'll be steady. All right? So how do we put the camera on the tripod? You will notice on this camera, on the bottom of the camera, you've got some outer edges here. Okay? These outer edges need to go in the grooves on the front of this tripod plate. You want to make sure that in the back here, there's a little latch that secures underneath the screw in the back here. So we just put this in these grooves, slide it forward, and you'll hear it click in. Okay? Now it's on there. What are we going to do before we take our hands off of this tripod, or off this camera? Okay? We don't want to just click it in and let go. On the left side of the camera is a tilt lock. You want to make sure that's locked. If it's unlocked, the camera will fall over. So we lock down the tilt, and in the front of this one there's a pan lock to go left and right. We lock down the pan. Now I can't go left or right, up or down. Now I can take my hands off the camera. All right? As long as I'm standing with arm's length of the camera. If I decide to walk away from the camera to look at the script or talk to the talent, if I'm further than arm's length away from this camera, what am I going to do? I'm going to take the camera off the tripod. I don't want to see a camera sitting on a tripod. How do we take the camera off the tripod? I'm going to loosen my pan here so I can swing around. And we've got this little button right here. There's a red button attached to a black bar. You need to pull the red button towards the back so that you can release this black bar. Your right hand's on top of the camera, and you pull that black bar out and slide the camera off. Okay? So to put it on, slide it on, listen to it latch, pull the red button, pull the black bar out to take it off. All right? Okay, so that's how we connect the camera to the tripod. Next thing I want to go over is how to provide power to the camera. Okay? We're going to use an Anton Bauer battery. We also have AC adapters if you wanted to plug into the wall, but these batteries last about 4 hours, and we haven't really had any shoots where we need to go over 4 hours, so we'll stick with the batteries. On the battery, you've got 3 little prongs there. Okay? Those need to line up with this back battery plate on the camera. All right? So we line them up, slide them in the holes, and then just slide that battery over to the right, and it clicks in and goes on. There is a release button right here on the top left side. When you want to take it off, you push that button in and then slide it off. Okay? All right. Now we want to power up the camera. So on the front over here, there's an on-off switch. Once we put the battery on, flip the switch to on. Then we're going to come over here, open up this LCD screen. So we're going to push this button in. A lot of people try to pry that open. Push it in and it'll pop open. Then we can pull the viewfinder out, the LCD screen, flip it over, and tuck it back in so that we can see. All right? Okay, let's talk about one of the first things that you're going to need to do once you get this camera set up is white balance the camera. How do you white balance this camera, and why do you white balance the camera? You white balance the camera in order to set your colors. If we set this camera and calibrate it to the color white, all our reds will be red, greens green, blues blue. We'll have the right colors. So, very important, you'll do this several times when you're shooting. If I'm going to white balance right here under this light, and then I'm going to swing around and shoot something over here, the lighting's different over here on this side than it is this side. I'll have to re-white balance. If I go out in the hallway, re-white balance. The lighting's different. Outside, definitely. Re-white balance. Okay? So, to white balance, the first step is there's a white balance button on the side of this camera. You have three options: preset, A, and B. Preset means automatic. It'll automatically white balance for you, which you never want to use. The camera will always screw it up. All right? You want to manually white balance this camera. So you want to put this toggle switch in either A or B. Doesn't matter which one. It's not like A's for inside, B's for outside, or vice versa. Just pick either one. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're getting enough light coming into the camera to do a proper white balance. So what we have to do at this point, and I'll go over this a little more in depth later, you want to make sure that your iris, the iris controls the amount of light coming into the camera. You want to make sure your iris is in automatic, so you're automatically getting enough light. Your iris is on the lens here, in the back, right here. Okay, this little wheel here, it's got the f-stops on there, the numbers. I can move this up and down. So if I've got it down here, it's kind of halfway closed, I can barely see. I'm not getting enough light to do a proper white balance. So what we want to do is put that iris in automatic. And the way you do that is you come up here to the lens, and attached to this lens over here is what's called a servo. Okay? On this servo, there is a button for you to be able to switch the camera, the iris, from automatic to manual. Okay, right in front here. Right now it's in manual, M. We're going to switch this over to A for automatic. Okay, now we're going to make sure, now that will make sure that we have enough light to do a proper white balance. Okay, so those are the first two steps. A lot of times when I ask students, how do you white balance a camera? They say, well, you zoom in on something white. Well, that's really step 3. We got to do these first 2 steps prior to zooming in on something white. Now what you're going to want to do, Z, can you hold a piece of white paper over here for me? There's one right there. Now you want to zoom in on something white. Okay, we're going to set the colors on this camera to white. So if you can see this screen here, I'm going to zoom in on a white piece of paper. We have white balance cards that you can check out with you. All right, I'm zoomed in on something white here. Then in the front of the camera here, right underneath the lens, there's a button that says AWB for automatic white balance. You're going to want to push that button once you have filled at least 75–80% of that screen with white. And if you look at the viewfinder, a number is going to pop up. All right, it's going to calibrate. And right now, I got, let me do that again. All right, I got 4,300, if you can see that. All right, 4,300. The proper color temperature for indoor light is 3,200. You're looking for 3,200 K. K stands for Kelvin. All right, I got 4,300, which is a bit surprising because this is good indoor light. Let's try that one more time, Z. Usually when I do this in here, I do get 3,200. So we'll zoom in on something white. We'll hit that button. This time I did get 3,200. So I might have had some green in the last shot. So 3,200 popped up in there fairly quickly. Okay. So now I know I've got a proper white balance. What I'm doing is I am measuring the temperature of the lights in here, and these are broadcast quality lights. So I'm getting 3,200. We can't go into a room like the classroom next door, flip on the fluorescent lights. When you white balance, you're going to get maybe 4,300. Those are not the proper color temperature light units for shooting in TV. You flip on all the lights in the classroom, wow, it's well lit. You know, I don't need lights. Yes, you do. You've got enough lights in that classroom to see, but not to get quality video. So now that I've white balanced, first thing I do is I try to find something with a little color in it, okay? And you can see that camera bag, my blues, nice rich blue, the green on the wall, the red tab, the white, the black. I've got the top video quality that I can get, which is what we're striving for. If I go in the classroom, white balance the camera, and get 4,300, I've got to do some things with the lighting in there. All right, I've got to identify what's my light source in that room. All right, I've got fluorescent lights, which aren't good, so we want to turn those off. I've got some windows, so I'm getting some outdoor light coming in, so I'm getting a reading between 3200, which is the proper color temperature of indoor light, and 5600, which is the proper color temperature of outdoor light. Okay, that's a question on the test. What are the proper color temperatures of indoor light and outdoor light? 3200 Kelvin, 5600 Kelvin. So I need to turn off those fluorescents, shut the blinds, make that room as dark as possible, and then I'll check out lights. We have several light kits here. You need to get a lighting certification, set up the lights, light that room, and then when you white balance, you'll get 3200 or thereabouts and have your best video quality. Otherwise, it's going to be, you know, a little drab. The video, the colors will not be as vibrant as they could be or should be. All right, so very important to get the proper white balance. All right, now let's talk about if you go outside. We need to white balance outside, okay? So what's going to happen is you're going to go through these same steps, and you're going to get an error message. It's going to say overlight. There's too much light outside on a bright day to do a proper white balance. So you're going to need to come up here on the camera and turn a filter on, okay? It says ND filter. Right up here at the top, neutral density filter. You need to filter out the light when it's so bright outside. So what is the purpose of the filter? It filters out the light. It'll make it darker. Okay? So when I turn this filter on to the first setting, filter 1, which is 1/4, you'll notice on this screen it'll get a little darker. Okay? Filter 1, reduce the amount of light. Filter 2, made it even darker. All right? So we're going to filter some of the light out by using that filter outside. If it is a bright sunny day, and that is the question on the test, what filter would you use outdoors in direct sunlight? I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to be on filter 2. When I go outside, I try to white balance, get the error message. I'll put it up to filter 1, get the error message again if it's bright out. So we have to go to filter 2 before you can white balance that camera and use it outdoors. I have several students that go out, say, I'm having trouble white balancing. I look at the camera, their iris is in manual, and it's wide open, and you're getting too much light. That's why the iris has to be in automatic when you do a white balance, because it won't make it as bright. All right, that's white balancing and filters. How do you calibrate a zoom lens is the next question on the test. What does that mean, calibrate a zoom lens? Well, that's a fancy way for saying what's the proper technique to focus the camera. Okay? So we get several students. If I'm going to shoot this camera bag here, I can't properly focus when I'm on a wide shot like this. Here's my focus right here. This is the lens. This first wheel is my focus. So if I'm on a wide shot and I try to focus, looks like it's in focus, but when I zoom in, and where's the zoom? It's located up here on the servo again. This little apparatus right here, there's a W and a T on there for wide and tight. Okay. Zoom in, zoom out. When I do that and zoom in, you'll see this camera's not nearly in focus. All right, so the proper technique, how to calibrate a zoom lens. You zoom all the way in, as far as you can go on your subject, and then you focus. Bring it in nice and crisp, and then you zoom out, and that'll hold your focus. Okay, zoom in, all the way, focus, and then zoom out. That's how you calibrate the zoom lens. What's the function of the iris? We talked about that earlier. Pointed out the iris. It controls the amount of light coming into the camera. How do you manually expose an image? There's another new term, exposure. Exposure talks about light. So how do we manually adjust the iris? How do we manually expose an image? Well, if we come up to the iris here, and we're in automatic because we just did a white balance, that won't move. I don't want to force it and break it. So again, you need to come up here to the servo, where the iris button is for the automatic manual, and put it to manual. Then you can manually adjust the iris. Now I can turn it manually. All right? That's how you manually adjust the iris. When you shoot, you need to be shooting in manual. You don't want it in automatic. And every time the sun goes in and out, the iris is adjusting on its own. And your video is getting lighter and darker. We want to put it in manual. Which knob on the lens would you never touch? Okay? Behind the iris here on the lens, there's a little knob, a little circle. This is called the back focus button. Whenever I check out a camera, I just always check this to make sure it's nice and tight. You know, if you wear and tear, sometimes that becomes loose. If that becomes loose and starts sliding up and down, you're going to have a real problem focusing the camera. When you zoom back, the focus will be out of alignment. It's called the back focus button. All right, right here on the lens. Okay, what are 3 functions of the servo? We've alluded to the servo a couple times. So we'll come back up here to the servo. And what are 3 things that you can do with that servo? 1, you can put the iris, which is located on the lens, in the manual or automatic with that button. Number 2, you can zoom out, zoom in. Okay. And number 3, in the back here, there's a record button. You can also record off the servo. You guys will not be using that record button. That's for sports shooters who shoot off the shoulder. You know, we want you guys always shooting off a tripod here. We need steady video. So there's 2 other record buttons on this camera. There's one on the top of the handle here, record, and there's also one on this left side, right next to the on-off switch. There's a record button right here. Okay? Doesn't matter if you start recording here and then stop up there or vice versa. What media does this camera utilize? This camera uses a SD card. That's the media. That's what we record to. You're going to have to go out and buy an SD card, all right, for your class projects. We don't provide them for you. So when you go out and buy an SD card, you're going to have to buy a Class 6 card or higher. We've got a lot of students going out and they are buying these Class 4 cards because the cashier or the worker there says, here's a card. Yeah, it's Class 6. They don't care. They're trying to sell you something. It'll be something like this. On the card, on the front, there will be a 6 inside of a C for Class 6. We usually purchase, well, we do purchase here 32 gigabyte cards. That's the amount of storage. A 32 gigabyte card will give you 114 minutes of available space for high definition footage, and it'll give you 140 minutes of space for standard definition. High definition files are larger. If you go into the store and buy a Class 6 32 gigabyte card, last time I did that, I paid $80 for one. They've got them online, buy.com, amazon.com for $25. All right? So you should order them online, much cheaper. It'll take a couple days to get here, but that's the cheapest I've found. All right. Let's demonstrate the proper way to put a card into the camera. All right. So if we swing this camera around, this side over here, you've got 2 slots for cards. The nice thing about this camera is you can put 2 cards in at one time. If the first one fills up, it automatically starts recording to the second card without missing a second. So how do you open up these slots? Right above this little window, there's a button. It says open with an arrow. So we push that and the door opens up. We pull it down. On this SD card, you'll see there's a little bit of brass on the bottom side there. All right, at the top. You want that to go down and to the front. And we slide that right in there. Okay? And then you close that door. That's how that card would go in there. First thing you want to do once you put the card in is you want to come back to your display here and you want to look in the bottom left-hand corner down here, and it's going to tell you how much space you have on that disk. Right down here in the corner. It's not saying it on here because it's not recognizing this card. This card won't work with this camera. But it gives you slot A, slot B. I told you, if you're in high definition, you can have 114 minutes. If yours says 6 minutes, that means you got a lot of stuff on that card, and you're going to need to erase what's on the card. So how do you erase what's on the card? You want to format the card, okay? So the way you format the card is by coming up here to the menu button. You need to get into the menu on this camera, all right? You press menu, and you're going to get a series of menus on the display. What are we formatting? We're formatting our SD card. What do we refer to our SD card as? Media. So we come down by using this circle here. You can go up, down, left, or right. We'll come down on this menu and select the media option. Push the little inner circle in, all right, on that wheel. That inner circle is actually the shutter button. You use that to navigate through the menu. So we push that in. It says Format Media. Yeah, let's push that in again. And then it's not giving us slot A or B right now because it's not reading that card. But you would pick slot A, go to the next menu, and then format it and wipe it out. All right? So you got to be very careful with this file-based system. Once files are gone, they're gone. You don't want to wipe out a card or delete files until you know you're done with that project. Okay? All right. Let's talk about video file formats. Okay? This camera, JVC, GY-HM750, shoots in standard definition and high definition. All right? In both definitions, you've got different file formats that you can record to. And it's important to know what file format you're recording to because you need to make sure whatever you record these files into, whatever format, that format is compatible with whatever you're going to edit with. Okay? So, how do we get into the file formats to check that? Again, we go to the menu button up here, and it defaults to the first one, which is Record Set. That's what we want. So we push the shutter button in again. Then we get Record Format. We'll push the shutter button in again. And there's System Definition. Push that in. There's your two options, HD and SD. So let's look at SD first. We'll come down, click on Standard Definition. And then the next menu option below that is your file format. So we go to File Format, hit Enter. There's your two options in Standard Definition, AVI and QuickTime. Those are the formats that you can shoot in. And I can tell you on Avid is compatible with both AVI and QuickTime in Standard Definition. So if you're going to shoot in Standard, you can choose either one. I'm hoping most of us are shooting at least, 70, 80, almost 90% of our stuff in high definition. Okay? So we go back up here, and let's change it to high definition. Then we'll come down to the video file formats and look at our two options there. The two options are QuickTime again and MP4. Okay? So I bought these cameras because Avid is compatible with QuickTime. This camera shoots in QuickTime in standard, high definition. Should be simple, right? Nothing's ever simple. There's always a catch. Little did I know when I bought these cameras that the QuickTime file format in high definition is wrapped in a Sony XD wrapper, which Avid does not recognize. So the bottom line is Avid will not accept, is not compatible with the QuickTime file in high definition. So question number 19 on the test says, which is the only Avid compatible high definition video file format on this camera? Everybody, it is MP4. Okay? If we're going to shoot in high definition, you've got to be in MP4. I've got too many students grabbing the camera, going out, pressing record, shooting without checking the format, coming back, they're in QuickTime, trying to get it into the editor, and it won't work. And they got to go out and reshoot their entire project. And they get upset, well, my project's due tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry you waited to the last minute. Well, if we can't shoot in QuickTime, who put it in QuickTime? I don't know. I didn't. But if I would have checked out the camera, I would have checked before I shot. All right? So you always have to go into that menu and check that format. Okay? We'll put it on QuickTime. Then we'll come down here and we'll hit Set. And now, once that adjusts, now we're in high definition MP4. Let's talk a little bit about frame rates. There are 60 frames of video in 1 second. 60 frames. All right? So what we can do is we can go back into this menu under Record Format, and after we select the video file format, we come down to the frame rate. Okay? Right now it's set for 60. If we're shooting in 60 frames, we're putting video on every single frame. We can change that. We can come down and select 30, 50, 25, 24. All right, I'm going to select 24 and hit Set. and now we're in 24 frames. We're only putting video on 24 of the available 60 frames, which is less than half, which our eye can start to detect now, okay? I'll take that card out. When we pan in 24 frames, you'll notice, if you look closely, that the video will kind of drag or stutter or be a little choppy, okay? That's because we're jumping all these frames. You could kind of see it as I zoomed out there, okay? See how when I zoom, it just kind of little choppy, little jittery. Same thing when I pan. It's got that little texture to it. You've got to be able to recognize that. And if you don't want to be in 24 frames, take it out of 24 frames and put it back in 60. What is the gain button? Where's the gain button and what's its function? The gain button is on this side of the camera, right above the on-off switch. It says gain, okay? What does gain do? It does the opposite of the filter. All right, what does a filter do? It filters out the light, makes it darker. So if we look at this screen right here, when I flip the gain button on, what happens? It gets brighter and even brighter, okay? That green screen is really washed out because it's so bright. All right, there's a difference with no gain. You can see the green. Turn the gain on, add more light, really washed out. Looks almost white. You never want to use the gain, okay? You don't want to go into stalling and say, boy, it's dark in here. Let me gain up and add some more light. The more gain you add, the grainier your video will get, and you'll have very poor video quality. All right? So if you're in a low light situation, what are you going to do? You're going to check out lights and use lights. All right? We'll light up our subject. Got too many students. I had a student right to my face the other day, check out camera equipment, was going over to Stallings to shoot. I said, it's going to be dark over there. You need lights? Lights, oh man, they're heavy. They take too much. I'll just pull them out in the hallway to do the interviews. It's going to look horrible, all right? But if he's comfortable with getting a C or a D, I'm comfortable, all right? We always have to use lights. Can't stress that enough. How do you view and play clips? Did we go over that? No? Let's talk about the shutter. I'm skipping around here. Shutter button. I indicated earlier that the shutter button is this inner circle right here. All right, so when you're not using the menu, you can turn the shutter on. What happens when you turn the shutter on? Well, I'll turn the shutter on. What happened to my video? All right, it got dark. If you have the shutter on and you're at a high shutter speed, it'll make your video dark. The shutter button and this gain button that we just went over are two buttons that can easily get hit without you knowing it. All right, you brush up against the shutter and turn it on, didn't even realize it. That's why every time when I shoot, if I'm shooting a football game, got the camera on my shoulder, the play ends, stop recording. All right, they huddle up. They're getting ready to come out of the huddle for the next play. Before I start recording, I look at my display. Is everything correct in there? All right, I'm looking down at the bottom right-hand corner here, if you can see that. All right, did my face, when I was shooting, accidentally hit the shutter button and turn it on? How do you know if the shutter's on? Well, right down here in the bottom right-hand corner, it's telling you 1 to 10,000. That's a shutter speed. That's the only way you can tell if the shutter's on. You have to look for that before you record every time. I'd hate for you to accidentally hit it midway through a project and half of your project's no good because the shutter was on. So we can just push that shutter button in again. That 1 to 10,000 goes away. The shutter's off. Right next to the 1 to 10,000 is another numerical value. It says 9 dB. dB for decibels. Most people think audio. Well, decibels is also a measure of light. That's indicating that your gain is on. Oops, I accidentally turned the gain on. Didn't want that. Glad I noticed that. Let's turn the gain off. That goes away. All right? Now we're ready. We're not going to have grainy video, dark video, etc. Another function of the shutter. I'm going to turn the shutter back on. And you can use this wheel here to shutter up or down. As I come down, my video gets brighter. All right. Right now I'm down around 112, 1.8. All right. What happens when I pan? We've got a low shutter speed, and the shutter's staying open, and our video is becoming distorted. All right. So you have to be able to identify when you look at your video and it's dragging or stuttering, what two things do I need to do to fix that? Check and see if the shutter's on, check to look at the frame rates. If I'm in 24 and I don't want to be in that, then we can change that. The macro button. All right, the macro button is located on the lens, right behind this back focus button. All right, we've got our iris, back focus button. Here's the macro. There's an M on that little button, and on top of that wheel it says macro on it. The macro button will allow you to get extreme close-ups. All right, I can put anything I want right up against the lens here in the front of the camera, and I'm able to focus on it by using the macro. All right, the key to doing that is you zoom all the way out, and you push that macro in and adjust that knob, and that will get you in focus on something that close. I use that a lot when I'm shooting videos for websites. I don't want to shoot the whole computer screen and say, up in the top left-hand corner is where you log in. No, I'm going to put that viewfinder right up against that computer screen, and I'm going to see log in right here and type www, and it's going to be large. And the viewers don't have to search for it when they're trying to find where that is. How do you view and play clips? I can't really demonstrate that because I don't have a card with any clips on it right now. However, if you want to do a quick test, you check out the camera, roll 10 seconds of video, let me see how my white balance looks and everything. Above this LCD screen here, there's a button called Camera Media. Right now, we're in camera mode. When we push this button in, now we're in media mode. And we can look at all the clips. Every time you hit record and stop, it creates a thumbnail, a new clip. Right now it's telling us we have no media in there, no clips. But you see all the clips lined up in there. You can hit the shutter button, which also has a play symbol on it, and play that clip and look at it, listen to it, check your video, check your audio. There's a zebra control on this camera. All right? The zebra control is located under the lens, right in front of the camera here. There's a little toggle switch. Okay? I'm going to turn it on right now. All right? And what that does, if you look at the viewfinder, it will, once I focus here, you'll see this a little better. It will add zebra lines in your video, which it's doing right now on this blue bag, wherever your video is overexposed. It's too bright. All right? You can use that tool so you don't get things washed out. All right? So how do we fix that? I've got zebra lines in there and on the white and on the side of the desk. It's too bright. What controls the amount of light coming into the camera? The iris. So we make sure our iris is in manual and we adjust it down. And as I adjust it down, now the lines are out of the bag. They're appearing on the back wall now a little bit. So the object is not necessarily, I got lines over here, the object is not necessarily to get rid of all the zebra stripes on your screen. You want to get rid of the zebra stripes on your subject. Okay? If my subject is this bag, well, now I've got zebra stripes down here on this white desktop. Well, white is a brighter color. You know, that's going to have zebra stripes in it. I'm not worried about that. My subject looks good. I don't have any more zebra stripes in my bag like that, completely washed out. All right, so you can use that to make sure your video looks good and is properly exposed. Let's talk about audio. Audio is the number one problem we have here. We have to make sure we're getting proper audio. Most of the time, 90% of the time, when we have bad audio, our project is ruined. It's because of poor audio. I know I brought an XLR cable down here. Z, can you just grab me an XLR cable off the wall? All right, so I'm going to show you, this is a lavalier mic, okay, in this bag. I'm going to show you how to set up a lav mic. This one here was not put back properly at all. I'm going to check and see who had white last. This right here is the base of the lavalier, okay? You will notice on the side it has an on-off switch. You want to make sure that the on-off switch is on. All right, the bottom switch is off, and then you got two options for on. Either one, doesn't matter. This lavalier mic comes with a AA battery to power it up. Okay, there's a battery in there. Also in this case, you will have a clip, and a windscreen. And this one's all tore up. So when I find out who had this last, what happens if you break something or tear it up? You buy it. These things, these little windscreens, cost 15 bucks a piece. I had about 7 or 8 students last year have to replace them. So this windscreen right here, if you can see it, is just a little piece of foam that's attached to a plastic base, probably by 2 or 3 drops of glue. We want to make sure that when we grab this, we're grabbing the plastic underneath. If we just grab the foam and pull it off the base, you owe me $15, okay? It also comes with, the case comes with this clip, and that's what we're going to use to clip it on somebody when we want to lob them up, as we call it. So we grab the mic, so we take this clip, all right, and this circle part here will not go over the mic because it's too small. So what you have to do is you have to squeeze this, all right? You want to squeeze it to open it up so that it'll fit over this mic, and then it'll clamp down on it and hold it, all right? Then you can take the windscreen and put it on top of the mic, and that will help reduce any wind noise, things like that, all right? So that's how you set that up. Then you grab an XLR cable, an audio cable, and you want to plug it into the base of this lavalier mic. All right, there's some prongs in there. You just line up the holes, plug that in. Then you're going to come over here to the camera, and on the opposite side of the camera, we have our audio inputs. You will notice on this side of the camera, we have a shotgun mic hanging here, okay, with a cord. So we want to plug this shotgun mic into input 1 on the side of the camera. We take our external mic, whether it's a lav mic or a handheld mic, and we plug it into input 2. Now, once you get it set up like this, there's 3 steps to get audio, to get clear, clean audio. All right? The first step is to look at these switches above your XLR inputs. All right? You've got 3 options: line, mic, and mic plus 48. I told you this lav mic comes with a battery. The shotgun mic doesn't. It won't work until we power it up. So we're going to put this switch on mic plus 48V. 48V stands for 48 volts. We need 48 volts of power from this camera battery to make this microphone work. The lav mic has a battery, so we go to number 2 input, and we just have to put that on mic. We don't need any power from the camera. And then there's a third switch over here. That's your input switch. That has to be on channel 2 in order to record 2 channels of audio. If it's on channel 1, it's going to take the shotgun mic and record only channel 1. Okay? So we've got that set up properly. The second thing we need to do is, in order to properly monitor audio, you cannot look at this screen and look at the meter and say, okay, I got good levels, my audio's good. We need to listen to the audio. That might be wind noise, that might be crackling because the cord's shorting out, so you always got to have headphones. Where do the headphones get plugged in on this camera? Right on the back handle here, behind this little speaker. All right, you plug your headphones in there. So you plug your headphones in, and you ask the person to give you a mic check, and they start counting, and you see you got a level, but you're not hearing anything in your headphones. Well, that's because up here, above the shutter button on the top of this camera, there's a monitor button. That monitors your audio. It's your volume. If it's turned down, you're not going to hear anything. You want to make sure you turn up your volume so you can hear in your headphones. All right? So you do that, and then you do your mic check, and they're counting, but it sounds very hollow. It should be crisp audio. You got this lav mic right plugged in right next to them, and the audio doesn't sound crisp. So there's another button above this LCD screen on the very left. It's called Monitor Select. All right? Right now, there's 3 buttons, 3 options. Right now, I've got it in channel 1, which means I'm only listening to channel 1 in my headphones, which is my shotgun mic. You need to make sure you're in channel 2, so you're listening to your lavalier mic. That's what you want to monitor when you're doing an interview. If it starts crackling or there's wind noise, it's your job to stop that interview and say, we need to move inside or reposition the mic or what have you. You don't want to do an entire interview with bad audio, obviously. Okay? The third step to get proper audio. We've talked a lot about automatic and manual. All right? We're going to shoot with the iris and manual. We're going to manually white balance. There's an automatic manual switch for your audio. It's located behind this LCD screen. If we pop this open, we can see audio select. All right? Okay. All right? And right now, I'm moving them down to manual. Well, if we're in manual for our audio, we're not getting any, we're not getting any levels right now on here. That's because you have to use these wheels over here to manually adjust the audio. So we can turn up 1 and now get a level on channel 1. Turn up 2, now get a level on channel 2. All right? But it's going to be impossible for you, while you're shooting and framing your shot and doing all that, to monitor this audio. And every time they raise their voice, bring it down and bring it up. So your audio is the one exception to the automatic manual rule. You want to keep your audio in automatic. All right? So we go in here, make sure it's on auto. That way, if this wheel is on 0 and this wheel's on 10, it doesn't matter. It's going to give you the proper audio levels each time. All right? So keep your audio on automatic. All right? A couple other questions on the test. There's 2 more questions. 1, how should you treat any piece of equipment? All right? Well, you want to treat it like you own it, obviously. Okay? This is a big, bulky piece of equipment. There are a lot of delicate parts on this camera. Again, if you break something, you're going to have to replace it. Your responsibility for this camera, taking care of it, includes not leaving it in your car. All right? You check out the camera at 9 a.m. and you've got shoot at noon. It's in the car. Someone sees it, they break the window, they take it, they know how expensive it is. All right? Well, I'll put it in the trunk then. You don't want to leave it in the trunk during the afternoon when temperatures get up around 90. You don't want to leave it in the trunk if you take it home when the temperature drops to around 30. Okay? Always secure this camera. Don't leave it in your car. Final question, what are the procedures and the restrictions when you check out equipment? When you want to check out equipment, you want to make sure that you fill out a form at Miss Jones' desk at least a day, possibly 2 in advance, to make sure that you can get that camera. Okay? Once you come to pick it up, if you're going to shoot that day, the gear needs to be back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We close at 5, the gear needs to be back at 4. If you check it out for that evening, it needs to be back at 9 a.m. We open up at 8. That gives you an hour. Okay? We've got a 3-strike policy. All right? If you bring the gear back late 3 times, you don't get gear anymore that semester. All right? Sounds kind of harsh, but we spend a lot of time trying to track down gear that's not in the equipment room. Every morning at 9 a.m., we do an inventory of our gear. Invariably, there's 1 or 2 sets missing. We're going through the paperwork. Who had the gear? Trying to get a hold of you. Do you have the gear? Yeah, I had a 9 o'clock class. I figured I'd bring it in at 10. Well, somebody needed the gear at 9. Now they got to reschedule their shoot. Okay? All we ask is that you call us. Be proactive. Have the number to the front desk. Have my number, email, what have you. Hey, I just woke up. It's 9:05. I'm late. I know I need to have the gear back. I got class at 10, 11, and 12. I can't get the gear back till 1 o'clock. It's going to be late. Okay. Thanks for letting us know. No strikes. Be proactive. All right? All right. That's the way you avoid that. I do not like checking out, and rarely do I check out gear over the weekend. Don't expect, if you have a project due on Monday, to check out gear the weekend. You need to plan your time better. Too many bad things happen with cameras over the weekend. You shoot for your hour, and the rest of the time it's bouncing around the trunk. Okay? So if there is a one-time must-get shoot on the weekends, come see me, and we'll talk about it on a case-by-case basis. Any weekend checkout must be cleared at least, at the minimum, 48 hours in advance. Okay? That's the JVC GYHM 750 camera.